Everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice little 10-game Major League slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? All right, so this slate is pretty tough. The pitching is not particularly great. There's no super strikeout pitchers. We have a couple that have, 5 to 6 strikeout range. In fact, most of these pitchers have that range, so it's really going to be, a lot of matchup dependency here. But with that said, before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It helps the channel a lot. I really do appreciate it. We did really solid yesterday. We almost took down GPP. It was very close. But today we should have some more opportunities. A lot of different ways you can build lineups today. So let's go ahead and get into this. So let's look at our pitchers first. So I do have a core play, which is Framber Valdez for the Houston. Now he's facing the White Sox, and he's not the most expensive pitcher on the slate. He will be the highest owned option. He's probably the only guy that really has really where I feel super confident that he gets over 22 fantasy points. His strikeout rate has been a little bit inconsistent, though, so that is going to hurt him some here, but he has the best overall matchup on the slate by quite a bit, so he's definitely my favorite play right now. A couple other options to look at will be Tanner Hoke for Boston, as he has a favorable matchup here, but he does carry some risk, as he has not been the best K rate, and he's been a bit inconsistent at times this season, though he's been pretty good recently. He's got the safest floor, but he definitely is a good GPP play, but he doesn't have the best K rate here. Now, we don't know exactly if Chris Sale is going to start for the Braves. I actually had Schwellenbach starting today, but if Chris Sale was to start here against Detroit, he would have some utility as well, but he just was added recently, so he will be somebody that I would definitely consider because he's going to have one of the best K rates on this entire slate here. So, and I do think Detroit's a team that's going to struggle today. Some other players that we like, Pablo Lopez. See, sorry, not Chris Sale. I'm messing up. Chris Sale's not pitching for the Braves, so I don't know why I thought that. It's Schellenbach. Yeah, so yeah, here we go. Okay, so I'm not going to be utilizing him at all. He's got a pretty tough matchup here, and not a good pitcher. Anyhow, let's move on to Pablo Lopez for Minnesota. So when we look at Lopez here, he's a good GPP play. He's struggled a lot lately. He's not my favorite choice, but he's one of the better options on the slate. The matchup isn't perfect, but he's one of the better strikeout pitchers on the slate. Really, the top 3 strikeout guys today are Hoke, Valdez, and Lopez. And there's really not a lot to love about any of them that much. So, Valdez is obviously my top choice, but all 3 of those guys have some utility today. A couple other guys that have some upside today. This is an extreme GPP play is Chris Bassett. Now, he's got a tough matchup against Boston, but he's only had 420 fantasy point games the past 10 starts. He's been up and down for this matchup here, but he does have some favorability. Another guy that I would consider would be Marsh for Kansas City. Now, he's probably going to be one of the better P2 options on the slate. He's kind of an alternate option for the GPPs today. He's not got the highest ceiling, but he's got a decent, he has been decent lately in a good matchup. His strikeout rate is not particularly great, but he probably won't give up more than a home run or 2 in this one, and so he's got some upside here from that perspective. Another guy to consider would be Severino for the Mets. Now, he's not going to have a high ownership today because he's got a tough match against the Texas Rangers, but he's a bit of a bust play because he has had some good games. But obviously, I don't expect him to have a big game. I think he's very, very risky on this one. Another guy that will be somewhat popular today will be Walker Buehler for the Dodgers. Even though he's struggled mightily since he's been back this season, he's only had one, 16 or fantasy point game or better. But he is facing Colorado, and he didn't do absolutely terrible against Colorado when he faced them at the Dodgers Stadium. But this game is in Colorado, so that definitely gets some more risk there. Another guy that's a Hail Mary play is Myers for Milwaukee against the Angels. He's had 2 straight 20 fantasy point games. His K rate has kept him from doing a lot, though, despite the fact he's not giving up a ton of earned runs yet this season. He doesn't have a whole lot of. He might give up a home run or 2, but he hasn't really had too many bad games. So he has not gotten super deep in a lot of games. So that's the concern here. But he's kind of a Hail Mary play as a result of that. So from the ownership perspective, 6 players project to have 18% or better ownership. In order, that's Valdez, Marsh. Then we have Myers for Milwaukee, Lopez for Minnesota, and Bassett from Toronto, and then Buehler from the Dodgers. Uh, those guys have the best ownership ranks. So just from that perspective, Hoke is going to be a very interesting play as he's going to have low ownership. Same with Cortez and Savali, uh, all being some low owned guys that have some upside on the slate. Let's go ahead and get into our bats today. So we do have a pretty good slate for batters. Now I do like two guys in Soler and Alvarez, and I'll get to those when I get to outfielders. But our top overall plays here at catcher is going to be Patrick Bailey for San Francisco, who was a good play yesterday as well, and he was very solid, hit a home run. I like him again today. He's got really good metrics, and he's going to be pretty popular and high owned. He's going to be chalky. Yanir Diaz is also in play for Houston. Now he's been good. He was good about a week ago for a bunch of games in a row, and he's kind of cooled off a little bit. He's still getting hits though, so he's definitely in play today as a good contrarian option. And Sean Murphy is another good. He's a good one-off for Atlanta, as he's nice and cheap, though he has struggled so far since playing this season, but he definitely has that potential on the slate. The top owned guys today will be Will Smith for the Dodgers, Patrick Bailey, and Yanir Diaz. Those are going to be top owned guys. The low owned upside guys will be whoever starts for Milwaukee, whether it be Sanchez or Contreras, Connor Wong, and Salvador Perez. They all have some upside on the slate. Looking at first base, this is going to be a tough position here because Ohtani is super expensive. Obviously, he's got a lot of potential today. He absolutely dominated the Rockies yesterday with 2 doubles and 3 hits and a stolen base. And he's got really good upside again, though he's extremely expensive. Cody Bellinger is also interesting today at $5,600. He's a little bit pricey for this matchup, but he's definitely worth a look. Some value options that look pretty decent. Michael Busch for the Cubs. Now, I really don't like him at second base, but I do like him at first. I think he's got good upside here and has some potential. And then Nate Lowe is kind of a sneaky contrarian play today for Texas, as he's got good metrics for this game against Severino, even though he's somewhat struggled so far this year. The top owned options today will be Wilmer Flores, Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and Bryce Hoskins. I think Hoskins is kind of a nice sneaky play today, too. The low owned with upside guys are Isaac Paredes for Tampa Bay and Dominic Smith for Boston. I think there's a lot of potential with Boston because their players are relatively cheap today. Looking at second base, Jose Altuve jumps off the page as the top overall play. He's been solid. He had an absolutely monster game in his last game, so 2 days ago. So I look for him to have another big game here. Nico Horner is an interesting play for the Cubs. I think the Cubs are going to be a sneaky stack team today, though they are going to be pretty popular fantasy, in the ownership perspective, I think. Brandon Lowe also looks really good today for Tampa Bay. Even though it's a tougher matchup, I do think Lowe is one of the guys from the team that has slight upside today. And if you don't use Minnesota's pitcher Lopez, then you can definitely do some stacking with that team. And then Simeon for Texas, he looks like he's solid today. He looked good yesterday. He didn't score before fantasy points, but this position was weak yesterday. It's nice and strong today, and I think those guys have a lot of upside. Our top owned options will be Brandon Lowe and Jose Altuve, and then the low owned upside options today: Miguel Rojas for the Dodgers, Valdez for Boston, and Caballero for Tampa Bay as well. So, a very interesting slate from that perspective at that position. Looking at third base, Chris Morel does jump off the page as the top overall play from this team. However, he has struggled a lot lately, so this is purely metric-based. Matt Chapman, meanwhile, for San Francisco, looks really solid today. I like him a lot. He's had some inconsistencies this season, but he definitely, when he does have good games, he scores good fantasy points, and he's priced pretty fairly today. Rafael Devers also looks interesting for Boston. Kind of a one-off play for them, but he definitely has good metrics today. Kiki Hernandez for the Dodgers could be a good one-off play today. He's a guy that's very inconsistent, but occasionally he has good games, and the metrics are definitely in his favor today. And then also Alex Bregman for this position has some nice potential on the slate. And he's still priced nice and fair at $4,100. He's really improved lately, so I like his potential here. But top owned play today will be Alex Bregman, and then Kiki Hernandez and Matt Chapman. The two low-owned upside guys are Isaac Paredes and Rafael Devers. And so that's probably, I definitely like being a little bit chalkier here, but there's just too many options there. And there are different price ranges. So maybe fill in third base last because you could put in Bregman, Hernandez, or Chapman there, depending on, how much money you have left over at those price points. Looking at shortstops, excuse me, we do like Corey Seager a lot today for the Texas Rangers. Now, he's been inconsistent this season, but he has home run metrics today, so he's definitely worth a look. Bobby Witt Jr. also looks fantastic today, though he has hit the ball very well lately, scoring double-digit fantasy points a lot. He is a little bit pricey, so he's going to be somewhat hard to roster. I really do like Francisco Lindor today for the Mets. I think he has good home run metrics today. He's also been absolutely phenomenal lately. Even without home runs, he scored a lot of fantasy points. He's having big hit days. He's been seeing the ball very well, not striking out much, and so he's definitely worth a look at his price point. And then Adames from Milwaukee, similar price point to him, and a little bit contrarian off of him, looks really good as well. The top ownership options at this position are Willy Adames and Francisco Lindor. Their price points are very similar. Low-owned upside guys, Romy Gonzalez, Bobby Witt Jr., Ceddanne Rafaela for Boston, and then Jose Caballero for Tampa Bay, kind of a contrarian option there. So let's look at our outfield now. So I do have Soler and Yordan Alvarez as core plays here. And I'm just going to move this over here so we can see it from that perspective. Makes it a little bit easier. So Toscar, Hernandez, Ohtani, Soto, and Yordan Alvarez, the top 4 overall plays. But I think Alvarez gets a boost here because his price is considerably cheaper than the top 3 overall guys. If we look at the second tier here, Soler is by far the top option on the slate for outfield, and he's priced nice and fair today. But Cody Bellinger, Sia Suzuki, Andy Pages, and Luis Rivera all have some upside in the slate, and then some contrarian plays here. Ian Happ, Josh Lowe, Austin Slater, and Brandon Nimmo all fit in there. If we look at the top ownership options here, Alvarez, Ohtani, Slater, Chris Taylor, and Andy Pages are all going to have a lot of potential today. That really makes Soler pretty interesting, as he's not going to be top owned, but he's not super low either, but he's in the middle. Adam Duvall, Charlie Blackmon, Miguel Vargas, and Jared Kalenic are all very interesting plays on the slate as well. Some low-owned upside guys, Toscar Hernandez, I think his metrics are off the charts. He's just super expensive because he's in Colorado today. Josh Lowe, Ceddanne Rafaela, Heliot Ramos for San Francisco, and Soler. I meant to say Soler is a low-owned upside guy, and he's just got absolute fantastic metrics. Tyler O'Neill, Yoshida, Duran, Jose Siri, and Mike Yastrzemski also have good upside on the slate. Let's look at our stacks here. So the Dodgers, the Cubs, Colorado, San Francisco, Houston, the Yankees, Atlanta, Minnesota, and Milwaukee all look absolutely fantastic from a fantasy perspective for stacking these teams up. I liked all these things. The Dodgers being in Colorado just gives them absolutely crazy metrics. The Cubs have really good metrics upside today too, and they have a lot of guys that look solid today. But I do like all these stacks a lot of these stacks are not 5-player stacks, so to keep that in mind. Like Colorado is really a 1 or 3-player stack. San Francisco is a 4-player stack. Houston's a 3-player stack with some upside there. Yankees have 4 players. Atlanta with 3. Minnesota and Milwaukee, both 5-player stacks. The secondary stacks here with Texas, New York Mets, Kansas City, and Baltimore all have some upside, but these are not the best stacks on the slate. They do have some potential, though. And then these bottom stacks, these are the teams that we're going to be trying to figure out which pitcher we want to use against. And really, a lot of them really seem to struggle today. So I don't think that they're particularly great stacks on the slate. So with that said, thank you guys for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free